I talk so much, I could make even the most withdrawn person speak. My childhood friend Ethan always complained about my chattiness, saying I had no ladylike qualities. He even insisted I learn from the refined style of the school's most beautiful girl. But to my surprise, the school queen, Serena, was staring intently at my lips as if something was brewing in her mind. I heard you can make even mute people speak just by talking so much. Immediately after, she asked for a favor, to annoy her autistic younger brother. She promised to pay me 1,000 VND for every hour he spoke. This school queen was still too green. She didn't know someone as unconventional as me had her own tricks. I walked to the back of the classroom and lightly tapped the silent boy's desk. Aren't you going to explain to everyone what happened yesterday? How you sneakily licked my foot while I was sleeping? He snapped his head up, his icy face suddenly showing surprise. It wasn't me. I turned to Serena and smiled. Transfer the money, honey. The entire classroom fell silent after my declaration. Daniel, the autistic younger brother, his face cold and pale, stared at me with wide eyes. Serena, the school queen, immediately rushed over, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Oh my God, save my brother. Serena explained that her parents had taken Daniel to countless psychologists, but everyone had the same conclusion. He needed a friend his age to help him connect with the outside world. However, Daniel didn't like interacting with anyone except family members. Just stick with him. If he says another word, I'll pay you another 1,000. Serena gripped my hand, her face beaming as if she'd struck gold. I looked at the money that had just been transferred to my account and felt my life instantly brighten. Annoying people, child's play. As a kid, I was already known as the neighborhood loudspeaker by my teachers. Once, my homeroom teacher deliberately seated me next to a student with hearing loss, hoping I'd learn to be quiet. Who would have thought that in just 1 week, I'd master sign language, and the two of us would chatter away with our hands throughout the entire class. My teacher ended up calling my mom to complain. This girl can even talk to trees, so this job was utterly easy for me. What's more, Daniel was quite handsome. I glanced at him. After uttering those 3 words, it wasn't me. He quickly lowered his head, as if regretting his overreaction. Alex, my childhood best friend, suddenly lunged forward and snatched my phone. Mia, don't take money for something so vulgar. Serena spun around, her eyes as cold as ice. Who's vulgar here? Alex was speechless. I gestured for him to leave and return to my seat. How had I never noticed how annoying this so-called best friend of mine was before? That afternoon, Serena seemed to have used her influence to get my seat moved right next to her brother. She told the teacher, my brother really needs to be around people, and it seems we should also install air conditioning. The teacher remained silent. When I pulled my chair over and sat down, Daniel still pretended to be asleep. From afar, Alex shot me a sharp, burning look. Meanwhile, throughout the entire class, I focused solely on Daniel's delicate nape. He was clearly awake, deliberately keeping his head down because he disliked me. How interesting. The moment the bell for the end of the second period rang, I leaned close to his ear and whispered, Daniel, do you know how incredibly white your neck is? It's so white like a duck's neck, it makes me want to take a bite. Perhaps I got too close. Daniel shivered slightly, then suddenly lifted his head, his eyes full of wariness as he looked at me. I quickly pulled out my phone, snapped a picture, and sent it to his sister. They say he has autism. He looks quite captivating, no joke. That expressive face is even more lively than mine. However, it took several more classes for me to truly realize how difficult Daniel was to deal with. No matter what I said, he would just sit still and motionless like a log. Even when the dismissal bell rang, though my throat was dry and sore, I continued to talk animatedly as if nothing had happened. After all, no one had ever tolerated my incessant rambling without calling me a nuisance. Despite gaining nothing, I felt like I had found a kindred spirit. I watched Daniel's slender, pale fingers slowly close his book, unable to suppress a small chuckle. What was so serious about that English lesson that you look so solemn? His fingers paused, he turned his head to glance at me for a moment, then quickly walked out of the room. I grabbed my bag and immediately ran after him. His sister had just told the driver that I would be riding home with them today. Before I could reach the doorway, someone yanked my backpack back so hard it hurt, making me gasp and widen my eyes. When I turned around, I saw Alex standing right behind me, his face dark. He doesn't want to interact with you, don't you get it? Mia, you're a girl, can't you have a little self-respect? This was the second time today I'd been spoken to so harshly. Although he was someone I had secretly liked for years, I couldn't accept being insulted repeatedly. I quickly hoisted my backpack and swung it hard at his face. Alex froze, staring at me while I panted, my chest heaving. "What's your problem? If I clung to you, you'd say I have no shame. But I'm not clinging to you. If I pursued someone else, you'd still say I'm shameless. Didn't you say something this morning? Something like, 'What kind of girl talks so vulgarly all the time? Don't you feel any shame?'" I let out a bitter chuckle. I clearly hadn't wanted to bring up the past, yet he brought it up himself. And every day after school, he'd tell me vulgar stories, laughing so hard he couldn't stand straight. I thought he liked that kind of talk, so I stayed up all night practicing pickup lines. All just to get him to spend a little more time talking to me. In the end, I became the school's notorious love dog, always spouting cheesy lines. "This is too much trouble. Go wherever you want, just get out of my sight." I shoved his hand away, then watched Daniel's figure, almost completely out of sight, and quickly ran to catch up. "Daniel, why didn't you wait for me?" I tilted my head, questioning him, and of course he didn't bother to reply. I glanced at the convenience store nearby and commanded in an authoritative tone, "Stay put, don't move." It was truly odd how obediently he stood there. I walked a circle around him and said, "Wait for me a moment, I'm going to buy something. Otherwise, I'll tell your sister about you secretly kissing me." Daniel looked up at me, his expression no longer as surprised as this morning, but his dark eyes still stared at me vaguely. I walked out of the convenience store with an ice cream, and when I looked up, I saw Daniel obediently waiting right next to the trash can. "Tusk!" I narrowed my eyes, observing him. I always thought my type was someone bright and energetic like Alex. But now, why did a quiet, obedient boy like Daniel seem so strangely cute? I nibbled on my ice cream, deep in thought. Finally, I came to a conclusion. I didn't actually have a specific type, I just loved beauty. I pushed the ice cream into his hand, but Daniel refused to hold it, and it dropped to the ground with a soft thud. He just walked straight ahead. I had to bend down to pick up the ice cream, then quickly ran to catch up, deliberately putting it in his hand again, only for it to fall to the ground once more. I started to feel annoyed. This kid is incredibly troublesome. I took 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, grabbing his collar and pulling him back. This time, Daniel couldn't maintain his composure. He quickly put his hand around his neck, taking 2 steps back with an intensely surprised look at me. I grinned and held out the ice cream. Finally, he took it. We walked side by side, but Daniel just held the ice cream without touching it. I leaned close and whispered, "You don't have to be embarrassed. I won't tell anyone. You have a pink tone inside." Daniel quickly bit the ice cream stick, nibbled, and then walked much faster. See, when people are most awkward, they always pretend to be busy. If there's a drink, they drink it. If there's ice cream, they eat it. I quietly watched him slowly lick the ice cream, my heart filled with joy. "Daniel, do you know ice cream can help cool your body down? Just put it into Swallow's Nest with buffalo skin when it's humid and hot." Daniel stopped eating, put the stick down, his lips red from the cold. Then he looked at me without saying a word, his eyes seemingly saying, "He's really at his wits' end with me." I felt a little embarrassed. This topic seemed a bit peculiar. I was about to change the subject when Daniel unexpectedly uttered his second sentence since morning. "You pig." I froze for a moment, then joyfully exclaimed, "Ah, right, it's Swallow's Nest with asterisk pork skin, not buffalo skin. I misremembered. Daniel, turns out you watch those silly viral clips just like me?" I thought this quiet kid didn't even use the internet, but he turned out to be quite internet savvy. My joy was boundless, as if I had just found a soulmate. Stepping out of the luxurious car, I enthusiastically waved goodbye to Serena, then turned around and almost froze. Alex was standing conspicuously on the steps, his gaze as icy as frost. "Does your mom know about this yet? You're getting friendly with someone who has a condition like that." I offered him the remaining ice cream. Alex's expression softened slightly, and he reached out to take it, but didn't forget to lecture me. "Daniel clearly has neurological issues. Do you think everyone can tolerate it like I can? You've annoyed me since we were kids, to the point where my head is about to explode." I squeezed the melted ice cream, squirting it directly onto his face. He shrieked, hastily retreating 2 steps. At the same moment, the motion sensor staircase lights flickered on. Sweet melted ice cream dripped down Alex's face. He glared at me, his eyes wide. "Are you crazy?" I took out a tissue to wipe my hands, then brushed past him. "Calling others crazy." "I think asterisk you're the one with the real problem." Alex turned his head, but I had already quickly climbed to the second step. The next day, during recess, I suggested to Daniel that we become friends on WeChat. This time, he actually reacted. I took out my phone to snap a picture. He frowned and pushed my hand away. I reached into his pocket to grab his phone. Daniel flinched as if I was about to touch a sensitive spot, immediately retreating 2 steps. Amidst this chaos, Alex suddenly tapped my desk. "Mia, about last night, I won't pursue it further. Tonight, my mom's making sweet and sour pork ribs. Let's go home together after school, okay?" I stopped teasing Daniel and quickly glanced at Alex. What was his problem? Weren't my words yesterday clear enough? I didn't even bother to reply. As I turned my back, I saw Daniel had stood up and left the classroom. I took a deep breath and immediately ran after him. Daniel stood motionless at the classroom door, looking like a pillar. I guessed he wanted to cut me off, but didn't know which way to go, like a stuck processor. I chuckled and lightly poked him. "Hey, are you really not going to be friends?" He didn't answer, just stood there silently until the bell for class rang. "Hey, the teacher's here." I tugged at his sleeve, but Daniel still didn't move. "What are you standing there stunned for?" The music teacher frowned, questioning him. I looked at Daniel, still motionless like a block of wood, then turned to the teacher. "Teacher, Daniel has a stomachache." Daniel's pupils briefly constricted in shock at my blatant lie. The teacher waved her hand, instructing me to take him to the infirmary. My off-key singing luckily escaped the music class because the teacher mistook Daniel for an exemplary student. He was like a heavy stone that I dragged along. When we reached the hallway, I passed by a window and caught Alex's cold gaze. "Daniel, you've never skipped class before, have you?" I gently released his hand, feeling the warmth from his palm make my heart flutter slightly, then unashamedly took his hand again. He didn't pull his hand back. I pulled him through the small alley in front of the school gate, straight to my favorite noodle shop. The owner, smiling brightly, brought out a giant bowl of noodles. "Bringing a friend to visit? Isn't it class time right now?" I laughed until my eyes squinted. "Yes, sir, we're skipping class." Daniel suddenly froze, quickly covering my mouth with his hand, as if afraid that if I said another word, he'd be in big trouble. I felt incredibly delighted. Oh my God, who created a creature named Daniel? He's truly too adorable, perfectly my type. I took 2 smaller bowls. "You take half, I'll take half, so our love will always be strong." Daniel frowned, staring at the noodles, not saying a word. I thought he was judging me, but then he took out his phone and handed it to me. I immediately understood. He had money, so he could order 2 bowls. In reality, I couldn't possibly finish it all. I'd just eaten breakfast. How could I swallow an entire large bowl? I quickly snatched his phone and added my WeChat account myself. Daniel hesitated for a moment, but didn't stop me afterward. Daniel ate his meal very calmly. Even a regular bowl of noodles was enjoyed with an air of elegance by him. After elegantly finishing our meal, I quickly wiped my mouth and pulled him away. Daniel was still a bit dazed but stumbled along, running after me. Once we were out of the alley, I turned around to observe him. His eyes were bright, as if he had just experienced his first rule-breaking adventure in life. His heart was pounding so hard that even standing opposite him, I could clearly feel it. He tugged at my hand, intending to go back, his eyes determined. I immediately pushed his hand away. "If you're going to ditch, then ditch. Are you going back to pay? That's so embarrassing." Daniel quietly pressed his lips together, not saying a word, his eyes containing helplessness mixed with indulgence, yet still firm in his principles. I grinned at him and said, "All right, going back is fine, but you have to tell the owner yourself. 'Excuse me, uncle, we're here to pay our debt. Otherwise, I won't go home.'" Daniel stood at the alley entrance, hesitating for a long time, probably about 5 minutes. Then he still took my hand and turned back. The owner was busy cleaning tables and chairs. When he saw us return, he froze like a statue. I lightly nudged Daniel's hand. "You say it." His palm was drenched in sweat, gripping my hand so tightly it turned red, and his ears were also blood red. I thought he would give up. But to my surprise, the next moment, I heard his clear but slightly hesitant voice. "Excuse me, Uncle, we came to settle our debt." The owner was completely stunned. He held the wiping cloth, looking blankly at me, and asked again, "What did you say, kid?" I couldn't hold back my laughter anymore, laughing so hard I couldn't stand straight. Actually, he and I were already friends on WeChat. Every time we finished eating, I transferred money directly. I had even gotten permission from the homeroom teacher for Daniel to skip that music class. Yet this silly boy believed it wholeheartedly. Whatever I said, he believed implicitly and nodded in agreement. Daniel looked a bit annoyed, his lips moved a few times, then he turned his back and walked away. I immediately ran after him, constantly chattering. Come on, I was wrong. I just wanted to hear you say a few more words. Daniel, your voice is really captivating. Say a little more. Daniel, imitate me. Mia is so beautiful, I love Mia. His ears became even redder. And then he suddenly stopped. I couldn't stop in time, so I bumped my head into his back. He turned his head to look at me for about 2 seconds, then uttered 3 icy words. How shameless! My laughter burst out. Daniel, you communicate so cutely. He probably wanted to scold me for being shameless like Alex, but chose to express it so politely. And I still giggled. He must have never met anyone as brazen as me in his life. Daniel couldn't take it anymore, leaving me behind and walking away in annoyance. That night, his sister transferred 10 million VND to me. Today, Daniel actually spoke when he came home. He even asked me why Dad's shoes smelled so bad. Oh, master, you are the good fortune of our entire family. I sprawled on my bed, laughing endlessly, picturing Daniel's annoyed, disgusted face, which was truly too cute. I picked up my phone to text Daniel, but at that exact moment, my phone rang. I frowned and pressed ignore. It was Alex again. I had blocked his number and WeChat, but now he was using his mom's phone to contact me. Our house and Alex's house were directly opposite each other. His mom had always been quite kind to me, even close to my own mother. No matter how rebellious I was, I couldn't be so brazen as to block an adult's number. I scratched my head, tugging at my hair, and tossed the phone aside. What was Alex's problem, really? From childhood to now, I had always chased after him, yet I'd never received a single call from him. It was always me annoying other people. I opened my old message history with Alex. Almost all of them were messages from me. Sometimes, it would take 100 messages for him to finally reply with a yeah or aha. As soon as I returned to the home screen, I saw Daniel had sent a message. I always thought he'd be as cold as he was in real life. Who knew that after connecting on WeChat, he'd reply to everything I texted. Even if it was just a few simple words, I felt an unprecedented sense of emotional value. He even cautiously used my stickers to reply. It wasn't until I sent some cheesy memes that he stopped using them. Perhaps Daniel wasn't unable to speak, but just not good at real-life conversations. Online, he seemed like a real player. Good morning, Daniel. I cheerfully waved at him. The cold friend didn't reply, just looked up and scanned me once. I felt a bit strange. He seemed too quiet today. The next second, I saw breakfast on his desk. He had brought it for me. Oh, I exclaimed in surprise. Daniel nodded, then shook his head. My sister. He was still as quiet as ever, but I understood perfectly. Please tell your sister thank you for me. These sauce-filled buns from this store are truly rare. My mouth was greasy after eating. Daniel, sitting next to me, proactively offered me a tissue. Alex approached, looking annoyed. How long are you going to keep causing trouble? You don't answer my calls. You don't reply to my messages. Our houses are right next to each other, but you keep avoiding me like a rabbit, never showing your face. I gathered up the buns and said, if you've noticed I'm trying to avoid you, then please stop loitering around me. Alex was so angry his chest heaved. Do you think those rich playboys genuinely like you? I paused briefly, and Daniel also completely stopped pulling tissues. He looked up, glancing at Alex with cold eyes. I slammed my hand on the table and stood up. Alex, we're still students. Why do you have such filthy thoughts, always thinking about dating and romance? Is that how a student should behave? As classmates, if you can't help, at least don't intentionally cause divisions. Alex was about to say something, but I immediately cut him off. Or is it because you're in a dating phase that your mind is filled with such thoughts? Alex choked with anger. Mia, I consider you a close friend, that's why I'm advising you. Someone like Daniel with money can get anything he wants. His words were cut short by the cold voice of our homeroom teacher echoing from behind. Alex, come with me to the teacher's office immediately. I almost couldn't help but burst out laughing, but when I turned around, I saw Daniel staring at me, his eyes dark. Before I could say a word, he pressed his lips together and turned his face away. I rubbed my forehead. Oh no, the little prince is sulking again. Honestly, you don't have to help me. I misspoke just now, it's me who needs your help. Can I borrow your homework to copy a bit? Daniel remained silent. I grabbed his sleeve and shook it. That strange video you sent me yesterday, I can't find it anywhere. Can you send it to me again? He still didn't say a word. I sighed and slumped my head onto the desk. Less than 2 minutes later, my phone vibrated. I took it out of my desk. It was a bank transfer notification from Daniel. Keep helping me. I have money. Don't talk to that guy. I don't like him. A straightforward kid who knew how to use money to pressure people like this. How could he not make someone's heart flutter? I hugged my chest, not hesitating at all, and immediately accepted the money. His sister, the school queen, had invited me to a meal, saying her parents wished to meet me to thank me personally. Recently, Daniel had been talking more with his family. Though it was just simple words, it ignited hope in their hearts. I waved and smiled. It's all minor stuff. In reality, Daniel was still very different from ordinary people. On average, if I spoke 100 sentences, him being able to reply with 2 or 3 was already a miracle. As summer vacation approached, my best friend from the next class and I were researching hot travel destinations. Lately, I'd earned a good amount of money and planned to treat my best friend to an international trip for her summer birthday. Suddenly, I felt an intense gaze from beside me. I turned to see Daniel fixated on my phone. Noticing his interest, I casually opened a travel clip. "Daniel, where do you like to travel?" He didn't say a word, just calmly withdrew his gaze. I didn't expect any reaction from him. Yet, Daniel's voice softly echoed from above my head. "Are you going on a summer trip?" "Yeah, planning to go abroad." I casually blurted out an invitation. "Do you want to come along?" Daniel fell completely silent again. I swung my legs and moved on to the next video. The student at the front desk turned around and excitedly told me about countless tourist spots he'd visited abroad last year. It seemed Daniel had said something just now, but it was too quick for me to catch. When I turned back, I saw he had buried his face in his desk, not saying another word. Sulking again. Lately, Daniel had been getting angry for no reason. I didn't understand what was wrong with him. After teasing him twice with no reaction, I decided to ignore it and continue my work. Dismissal came quickly. As soon as I finished organizing my books, I looked up to see Daniel with his backpack on, standing ready at the classroom doorway. He stood outside, the sunset glowing on his slightly tilted cheek. I knew he was waiting for me, so I quickly stuffed all my books into my bag. I secretly thought I'd take the opportunity on the way to ask why he was sulking. Unexpectedly, just as I stepped out, Alex's face suddenly appeared right in front of me, startling me so much I almost dropped my sandals. "What do you want now?" I frowned, scrutinizing him. Alex casually tossed a set of keys towards me. "Your mom kept calling you and couldn't reach you. She asked me to tell you that you're moving to my place next week. My parents are busy." I breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I can perfectly well order food at home myself." When I looked up, Daniel had vanished from the classroom doorway. Annoyed, I ruffled my hair and rushed outside, only to see that he had already left. I vaguely realized the reason for Daniel's anger. He seemed to have a strange sense of possessiveness over me. It wasn't love, but more like a precious toy that no one else could touch or look at. When I talked to the student in front of me, he also seemed unhappy. When I talked to Alex, he showed even more intense annoyance. Yet the strange thing was that I didn't find his behavior unreasonable. On the contrary, I found it incredibly adorable. After all, wasn't that possessiveness precisely the sign of a budding affection? I walked home slowly, occasionally swinging my legs. Having gotten used to riding in Daniel's car, now suddenly having to walk again, my feet ached incessantly. From behind, I heard a faint rustling sound. I turned my head but saw no one. I shivered slightly, muttering to myself, "Surely I'm not being followed by thugs, am I?" When I took 2 more steps, the faint footsteps behind me were still there. I suddenly spun around and saw Daniel standing motionless. A mischievous smile bloomed on my lips. I quickly ran closer to him. Daniel remained in place, seemingly wanting to hide, but since there was no trash can nearby to conceal himself, he eventually just stood still. His processor was overloaded again. "Daniel, are you stalking me?" He glanced at my face, didn't reply, just calmly walked beside me. "Where's your car?" "Already took my sister home." "Then why didn't you just go home too?" This time, he remained silent. I leaned close, a playful smile on my face, and asked, "Are you perhaps reluctant to leave me?" Daniel remained silent, but his steps faltered slightly, almost tripping because of my over-the-top teasing. "My house has plenty of empty rooms," I continued nonstop throughout the entire walk. When we reached the apartment building, Daniel, who had been completely silent until now, unexpectedly spoke. "Come live at my house." I froze, staring at him blankly. "What did you just say?" In Daniel's eyes, there seemed to be sparkling stars. He looked at me unblinkingly, not repeating his words. I suddenly realized that he must have heard Alex say that my parents were on a business trip and I would be staying at his house for a few days. I burst out laughing. "I won't be staying at his place." Daniel's expression relaxed slightly. He nodded gently. Ah, I nudged some pebbles with my foot and softly asked, Daniel, do you have feelings for me? A fleeting blush crossed his face, his hair obscuring the expression. He bowed his head so quickly I didn't catch anything. I had only been joking around, giggling and waving my hand. All right, go on home. Being escorted all the way home by a young master like you is a great honor. As Daniel's figure gradually disappeared, I turned to go inside. To my surprise, my parents suddenly appeared right in front of me, startling me. Weren't you two on a business trip? My mother's expression was quite serious. Your grandma is ill. I've asked the teacher for you to miss school. Anyway, it's only one more week until summer break, so we're going back to our hometown now. My grandmother's house was quite far, meaning I wouldn't be able to go to school the next morning. I took out my phone to text Daniel, then left for our hometown with my parents. In the silent night, I kept checking my phone screen but received no reply from Daniel. I frowned, reviewing our chat history. Was he still angry? The phone signal in the countryside was weak. All my messages failed to send. I fiddled with it endlessly, managing to send only 3 messages until late at night. Yet, Daniel still didn't reply. I let out a disappointed sigh and put my phone aside. However, on the 3rd night, as everything was steeped in silence, a small pebble unexpectedly dropped from outside my window. I froze, instinctively walked to the window and widened my eyes in astonishment. Under the silver moonlight, a young man with a cold expression stood beneath the eaves. His slender shadow stretched long on the ground. I was in my nightgown, but without thinking, I immediately rushed downstairs. Daniel was standing amidst the wild grass by the village road. On his hands were several red, swollen mosquito bites, and he occasionally slapped at them due to the itch, his movements stiff like an intricate machine. I burst out laughing. What are you doing here? I hadn't expected him to answer. To my surprise, he looked at me intently, his tone very serious. Couldn't reach you. I was utterly bewildered. Didn't I send messages? He said softly. My phone is gone. He pressed his lips together, his eyes showing a hint of loss. When I took you home, my phone was stolen. I laughed again. Perhaps because it was the young master's first time going out at night, he unfortunately encountered a thief. So how did you find your way all the way here? I asked your friend. How strange. Someone like Daniel actually asked other people for directions. The more I thought about it, the funnier it became, and a smile gradually appeared in the corners of my eyes. Daniel seemed annoyed that I was laughing. I thought you were mad at me, Daniel said. I was surprised. Mad about what? He didn't answer my question. It was rare to hear Daniel speak so much, so I began to tease him like playing with a puppy. Daniel, your mouth is so smooth today, it makes me want to kiss you. His eyes widened, as if blaming me for interrupting, and also as if he couldn't believe I could utter such brazen words, and his ears turned beet red. You asked if I didn't want to leave you. I didn't answer. You got mad. Under the moonlight, his face looked especially serious. Yes, I don't want to leave you. I felt confused. Why was he suddenly asking and answering himself like this? This kid must have a slight fever. He seemed unhappy with my reaction. Daniel frowned even more. What about you? Do you want to leave me? It was only then that I understood. Daniel thought that on the night we parted before I went to my hometown, I had asked him something, but he didn't answer, so I got angry and wouldn't talk to him anymore. That's why he hastily chased after me all the way here. Where did the question, do you want to leave me, even come from? I never asked such a dramatic question. My eyes suddenly lit up. Daniel, you mean you like me, and now you're asking if I like you. Daniel froze, and I saw his face turn crimson from his neck all the way to his ears. Yes. I hadn't expected him to be so straightforward. Oh my God, he's too adorable. I just wanted to hug him tightly to squash him into a soft mess. And I actually did because I've always been known as a thick-skinned girl. Daniel, can I touch you? I asked with a goofy grin. Daniel sighed softly. You're already touching me. Under my hand was a firm set of abs. I took a deep breath. Oh my goodness, so I actually managed to win over such an amazing guy? Daniel, how did you get here? He turned his head, his gaze directed into the distance. I followed his eyes in surprise. It turned out our private driver was waiting at the edge of the village, covered in mosquito bites, constantly swatting them away. I subtly curved my lips. All right, you can go back first. I'll be back tomorrow morning too. He nodded gently, then slowly removed my hand from his chest. See you tomorrow. The happiness made my heart feel like it would stop. Before, whenever we parted, Daniel would just turn and walk away without a word. But now, he knew to say, see you tomorrow. Love truly has a miraculous power. The surprising thing was that the first person to greet me home wasn't Daniel, but Alex. He stood blocking the entrance to my house, asking where I had been these past few days. I couldn't be bothered to reply. However, my parents were overjoyed to welcome him. "Alex, dear, your grandma wasn't feeling well, so your aunt and uncle took her back to her hometown for a trip. Wasn't summer vacation coming up anyway? We thought she could rest there for a few days. If you need help with any homework, just bring it over." In front of adults, Alex always appeared very well behaved and polite. I had no desire to look at his hypocritical face, so I pulled my suitcase and walked straight into the house. As soon as I stepped inside, my phone suddenly rang. I immediately answered. It was Daniel. He said he was waiting for me downstairs. "Mom, I'm going to take out the trash." I was overjoyed, hastily grabbing the trash bag and dashing downstairs. Daniel was squatting next to my trash can, looking exactly like a lost puppy. I swallowed hard. My God, how can someone be so strikingly handsome in this world? Not only that, he was my boyfriend. Who could truly understand this overwhelming joy? In my head, hundreds of pink balloons floated around, making me rush towards him like a madwoman. Just as Daniel stood up, I immediately lunged and hugged him tightly. He was surprised and stumbled back 2 steps, but deep in his eyes, a sparkling joy shone. Daniel still wasn't quite used to smiling. He tried to curve his lips, creating only a very subtle smile, just enough to be considered gentle. But I didn't care about any of that. After all, this was my Daniel. Even if he did something awkward like pick his nose, he would still be incredibly handsome. I took his hand, chattering away, telling him everything that had happened at my grandma's house. As always, Daniel listened silently, occasionally nodding in response. He was still a man of few words, but his attention and gentleness completely melted my heart. When it was time to say goodbye, I was still reluctant to leave, so I stood on my tiptoes and gently kissed his cheek. Watching his face turn crimson like a boiled shrimp, I felt utterly satisfied and happy. I let out a mischievous little laugh, lightly patted his bottom, and said, "I'm leaving now." Teasing such a gentle boy truly made my mood even more exhilarated. But the moment I turned my back and headed towards the top of the stairs, I almost froze in place. Alex's face was dark, and standing right behind him were my parents. Daniel stood a short distance away. Alex lowered his voice, just enough for us to hear clearly. "Mia, why is your affection so fickle?" "You just gave your heart to someone else so quickly," I replied with an indifferent gaze. "Should I cling to a withered tree like you until I die?" My parents had always known that I once had feelings for Alex. Alex turned around, forcing a stiff smile at my mother. "Auntie, it's that boy over there. He's dragged Mia into a romantic relationship too young." I widened my eyes in utter shock. My mother turned to look at Daniel, who was trying to move closer, though his face was a bit pale and he was slightly frowning. "Dating young? Our Mia isn't a child anymore, is she? Or is that boy underage?" I immediately grinned, flashing a bright smile, and quickly replied, "He's 2 months older than me, Mom." My mother breathed a sigh of relief, her eyes showing more satisfaction when she saw Daniel standing opposite. "Then what's the problem?" Alex looked stunned. "Auntie," I silently witnessed his clear defeat. I had forgot to tell him that my mother naturally loved good-looking young men, and standing next to Daniel, Alex was truly overshadowed. Daniel moved to stand behind me, greeting my parents politely. "Hello, Uncle, hello, Auntie." My mother was so pleased that she kept winking at me, signaling, "He's so handsome, isn't he, sweetie?" Alex clenched his fist, his rationality seemingly consumed by anger. "Auntie? He's sick, Auntie. He has a mental condition, autism. Do you really want Mia to be with someone like that?" The atmosphere suddenly became suffocating, intensely tense. Daniel's face instantly went white. I was so angry I couldn't speak. Without a sound, I stepped forward and slapped Alex hard across the face, a loud, clear sound. This action had been simmering inside me for a long time, from the first day he dared to call me shameless to the first time he slandered Daniel for being sick. "I think you're the sick one. Get lost." Alex looked up, his cheeks red, but no one spoke up to defend him. He gritted his teeth, turned, and quickly walked away. Daniel still maintained a pale face, his eyes full of confusion as he looked at me. I was about to step forward to shield him when he himself took a step forward and bowed deeply. Uncle and Auntie, my condition is almost completely cured," Daniel said, his voice trembling and faltering. I won't hurt anyone. I cherish Mia very much. I'll be fine. I will definitely treat her well." Suddenly, my eyes stung with tears. My parents remained silent. Daniel quietly turned away, his face ashen. I gently touched his shoulder, seizing the chance to give him a quick kiss. Seeing his face turn crimson like a boiled shrimp, I chuckled. It's okay, I'll convince Mom and Dad. I went back into the house. My mother was sitting on the sofa, rubbing her temples. Mia. Your dad and I aren't against it. It's just that if you loved an ordinary person, life would probably be much happier than being with someone with psychological issues. My mother tried to speak as gently as possible. I knew she only wanted what was best for me. I nodded. Mom, I love him. When we first met, he could barely talk. You see, today he dared to talk a lot to you and Dad. I believe he'll get better. My mother nodded slightly, finally saying nothing more. I didn't expect Daniel to act so quickly. That night he texted me, "Tomorrow my driver and I will pick you up. Can you come home with me for dinner? My parents want to meet you." In the car, I was so nervous that I gripped Daniel's hand tightly, making red marks appear on the back of his hand. Daniel placed his hand on my wrist. He wasn't good at comforting others, only saying a simple sentence, "You're very good. Everyone will love you." I suddenly remembered when he had coldly called me shameless. For some reason, I felt less anxious. I had imagined many possible scenarios. For example, Daniel's parents might look at me with aristocratic disdain, or when Daniel wasn't looking, his mother might secretly slip a check into my hand, telling me to stay away from her son. But when the car drove into the gate, I was truly astonished. Daniel's parents, along with a long line of housekeepers, stood in 2 rows, all dressed in bright red, as if preparing for someone's wedding. Serena, the school queen, stood in the middle, holding a large banner, enthusiastically welcoming Miss Mia, the benefactor of the Daniel family, to our humble abode. Humble abode? My mouth twitched. Such a magnificent villa, such splendid interior, and they call it a humble abode. Daniel's mother gripped my hand tightly, so moved that her eyes were wet, as if she wanted to kneel. Mia, dear, I hope you'll stay with our Daniel forever. You don't know how many psychologists I've consulted for him over the years, or how many friends I've found, both male and female, but anyone who stayed with Daniel for less than a week would quickly leave. Only you? My father's voice suddenly choked up. Only a stubborn, strong, and unique girl like you is capable of opening Daniel's heart. My lips involuntarily twitched. Uncle, do you mean that only a brazen person like me is capable of moving his heart? Is that right? Even so, I wasn't angry, because this relationship was truly something I had risked everything to achieve. Not long after, Alex moved houses. I was talking on the phone with Daniel while following my father's instructions to take out the trash downstairs. As soon as I opened the door, I ran right into Alex, who was diligently moving his belongings. I was slightly startled. He looked noticeably thinner. His gaze lingered on my face for a few seconds, filled with a sadness I couldn't comprehend. I continued down the stairs with the trash bag. Suddenly, a voice called my name from behind. Mia! I immediately turned around. Alex was standing on the stairs, exactly in that elevated position where I had looked up at him countless times. But this time, everything felt very unusual. He gently bowed his head, his voice slightly trembling. I'm truly sorry. If I had had the courage to face my own feelings sooner, if I hadn't used hurtful words towards you, would you still have feelings for me? I just smiled, gently shook my head, then turned and continued walking down. My phone in my pocket suddenly vibrated. Daniel's voice on the other end was distinctly deeper. You promised me you wouldn't talk to him. I pouted slightly. But I didn't say anything, did I? He took a deep breath. But you shook your head. Did he know that too? How could he be so strict? My eyes widened. Was this young Master Daniel being pampered too much lately? I suddenly remembered that the moment I moved to sit at his desk, he had once transferred money to me. The sole purpose was for me not to talk to Alex. At that time, he hadn't even bothered to say a word to me, yet his ownership had been clearly marked from the start. Daniel, when exactly did you start having feelings for me? I thought he would remain silent and not answer. But instead, there was silence on the other end of the line for about 2 seconds, then a voice, mixed with a hint of tenderness and a playful chuckle, spoke. Just as I looked up, yeah.